So now the next thing I want to do, and one or two of you had a question about how you would move one of these columns underneath the heading that says finish. Well, I know a couple of you at least are interior designers, and you're probably used to having, I know I am, instead of just wall finish, I have wall and then north, east, south, and west. So let's go ahead and do that as extra credit. That is on page 4. So we're going to add more columns so that it's going to look like, oops, it's going to look like this, where you have, so there are 3 levels of headings here. You got the title, but then you have finish, and under finish you have floor base and then wall, and then there's 4 wall finishes under that. So let's see how we would go about doing that. We go to the ugly view, right? Then we go to, now which edit button would I use to add some additional fields? Right. And then I go in here, and because there is no north wall, east wall, south wall, and west wall finish, now we do have to add, which is meaning create custom parameters. And then we say north. Now, don't let it be a length. It needs to be a text parameter. Otherwise, it'll force you to say 8 feet 0 for your wall finish. And we can group it, rather than grouping it under text, let's group it under materials and finishes, even though it's not really a Revit material. Notice there is a type of parameter called material, and if you pick that, then the only values you can enter in that cell in your schedule would be materials that are listed in your Revit schedule, your Revit list of materials, which is unfortunately a little too limiting for when you're really picking a paint finish called PT1. So let's just leave it text, and then let's move that up to next to where it says wall finish. So now if we say OK, there's the north wall finish. I want it to just be a capital N. Now it's starting to mess up our headings here, our grouping, so we'll deal with that in a second. So now let's go back and add another parameter. I'm going to call this east wall finish. Put it under materials and finishes. By the way, if you want to go fast like I am, I'm going to one field and then I'm tabbing down to the next one. Tab down to OK and I hit enter. So then I'm going to add another parameter. I'm going to call it south wall finish. Tab M, no, not material, T for text. Tab M for materials and finishes. Tab enter for OK. And then one more add parameter. I have north, east, south, and then I do west, finish, tab T for text, tab M for materials and finishes, tab and enter for OK. So now I'm just going to move all those up. Move up, move up, move up. Move up, move up, move up, move up. And then I can change them to E and S and W. And then I can highlight that wall and just, actually I have to go in here and just delete. I can't delete it because it's a built-in parameter, so I can say remove it from the list of used fields. So we're not using that parameter right now. So then our next challenge here is to group them under finish and group that under wall. So let's see how, first of all, how do you remove one of these little groupings, like finish for floor and base? You don't see that anywhere in the fields. Nowhere does it say finish. Not even in formatting, none of these say finish. So this is one element that does not show up. It's one of the only things about schedules that you can't get to from one of these 5 tabs. The only way to get to it is to click in the cell. And there's a group and ungroup button, but it's very hard to get those buttons to light up. So what you want to do is you want to drag across those 2 columns, and sometimes, okay, it says group headers. If I click in there, if you right-click, it's picky. So if I move into another cell and then I right-click directly on finish, then I can say ungroup headers, and that eliminates that little finish heading that will span those 2 columns. And I have to do it again here. I just hover and then right-click and say ungroup headers. So now I want to start by grouping NES and W. And this is weird too. You have to swipe across them with your button held down. And for some reason it won't let you swipe sometimes if you start in a cell. So I click elsewhere and then I come along and I swipe. And once you've swiped, then you can either right click or then the group button actually lights up here. And so that creates this little kind of super cell above those 4 columns, and I can say, oops, I want capital letters here, wall. Then I drag across ceiling and all the walls and the base and the floor. Then I do group again and I click in that cell and I say finish. So now we've got finish, floor and base, and wall, northeast, south, and west, and then ceiling. And then we're on to ceiling height and comments. So if I go back to my sheet for the preview now, there we go. I've got everything I need. And now it's just a matter of kind of filling in the boxes with kind of hypotheticals. So even my handout again, I didn't really kind of flesh out all those. I'm not going to grade if you have finishes that I don't agree with or something silly like that. But I would like you to try to go ahead and fill in values for everything here. So I left out ceiling height. I should have filled that in. And you can put in some comments if you want, like the fact that the family room 110 is the former kitchen. The breakfast room is a new room. The kitchen is a new room. The hall is the former breakfast room. Living room is existing with no change. So if I want the floor and the wall finish to be unchanged, I just say existing. And notice how I'm powdering the I'm painting the powder room. I'm powdering the paint room. I've got paint and ceramic tile on those walls and so on. So I leave that up to you to decide how you want it. But I also promised that I would talk about how to wrap the schedule on more than one line. And this is kind of cool. So first I'm going to go ahead and narrow up these columns a little bit so I have room for 2 columns of schedule. Ooh, I hate when I get one letter like that. I can make area a little narrower. Number I can definitely shorten. And room name. Okay, even though my sheet's not really big enough, I'm going to go ahead and do this. So if I start with my schedule on one place like that, and let's say I've got so many rows now that it's filling off the bottom of the sheet. Well, this is kind of cool. You select the schedule, and you click this little break symbol. And so now my schedule goes on 2 columns. And if I shorten the one on the left, it lengthens the one on the right. So I could have basement on one row and first floor on the next column. Or I could actually wrap like that, and I could hit the break symbol again. So then if I had a really big schedule, it could be on 3 columns on a bigger sheet. This is 11 by 17, so there's not really much room. But you get the idea. So, and if I want to remove the extra columns, select it, and see this little drag arrow, this control at the upper left corner. No, that's not what I wanted to do. You have to tab until that arrow lights up. And then if you just overlap it with the previous column, it just merges back in. So I'm going to tab until that's purple, drag that back in here, and now I'm joined back into one column. I think that was the coolest thing when I first saw that. Okay, I've got 3 columns. I'm going to grab the column on the right. If I try to drag it, it drags the whole thing, but if I'm careful when I select it, see how there's a little drag arrow right there. If I get that to turn purple, and then I just kind of overlap it with the next one, it just joins it back. And then I do it again. I grab that drag arrow, just kind of overlap it, and it just joins it back into one schedule. And so now there's no longer stretching the length because it's going to be as long as it needs to be to finish in one column. So if I really wanted to condense this onto multiple columns, I could change it so that it wraps on multiple lines here. That gets kind of annoying, like old dining room. But That's how it works. So let me go ahead and save that recording.